Okay, let's convert this rectangular point, this rectangular coordinate point, to a polar coordinate point. Okay, so if it's in rectangular, that means I'm given an x and a y, and I want to convert this to radius and an angle, radius and theta. Okay, so what I'm going to do is use the formulas that I'm given. Okay, and I have, let me kind of write them down. So x is equal to r cosine of theta. Y is equal to r sine of theta. Okay, and then r squared is equal to x squared plus y squared. It's just the Pythagorean theorem. And if I wanted to rewrite that, the square root of x squared plus y squared, right? So, of course, these two go together. They're basically the same formula. Okay, so let's find r first. Okay, because I have x is 3, and I have y, it's the square root of 3. So r equals the square root of 3 squared plus the square root of 3 squared. Three squared is 9. When you square a square root, they just cancel out to leave you with just the 3. So r equals the square root of 12. If I can simplify that, I should. 12 is 4 times 3. And since the square root of 4 is 2, I can actually simplify this to be 2, the square root of 3. Okay, so that's my radius, 2 the square root of 3. Now to find the angle. Okay, so to find the angle, you want to do two things. First, note what quadrant the point is in. Okay, I'm given an x and a y that are both positive. Okay, and if you think about the plane, this is where you're going to have a positive x and a positive y, right? The first quadrant. So my point is in the first quadrant. Do that. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's use either x or y, one of those formulas. Let's go with x. X is equal to r cosine theta. Well, x is 3. R, we just found, is 2 the square root of 3. Cosine theta. I don't know the angle yet, so I'll leave it like that. Okay, so now let's actually try to simplify this a little bit. I'm going to divide both sides by 2 the square root of 3. So 3 over 2 the square root of 3 equals cosine of theta. Okay, now ordinarily we check to see where this is on the unit circle, but that's in a weird form, so we need to try to simplify it a little bit. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom of that fraction by the square root of 3. I'm trying to rationalize the denominator. I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 3. Okay, what that does is the top just becomes 3 the square root of 3. The bottom becomes 2 times the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. When you multiply these two together, the square roots cancel out to leave you with just 3. So this simplifies to the square root of 3 over 2. Okay, so cosine is the square root of 3 over 2. So then the question becomes, where on the unit circle is cosine the square root of 3 over 2? And that's at two places, at pi over 6 and at 11 pi over 6. Okay, I can't have both angles as my answer. So that's when you want to refer back to the question, what quadrant is that point in? Okay, and remember we said that the point, this point, is in quadrant 1 because you have a positive x and a positive y. If you had a positive x and a negative y, then it would be in the fourth quadrant. Okay, but it's in the first quadrant because they're both positive. So the only angle that's in the first quadrant is pi over 6. So I have my angle. Theta has to be pi over 6. So finally, I can answer the question. The ordered pair, the polar coordinate, is r, which is 2 square root of 3, comma, theta, which is pi over 6.